Hi everybody, today I'm continuing on with my advice videos. This one I've kind of tailored to be university advice, but I do actually think you could probably apply it in any life situation. This video is about how to cope with anxiety. So some of the points are going to be specific to university and some of them are just general, and I'm going to kind of try and explain them in a more generalised way. So hopefully if you're a person who suffers with anxiety or is susceptible to it or is just worried about what could happen if you do start suffering with it, hopefully this video can help you. My first piece of advice, if you're at university and you're suffering from anxiety, is stay on top of your workload. Essentially, all of these points are going to be geared towards making life as easy for you as possible. And I really think that minimising stress is one of the best ways to cope with anxiety. Any situations that you do have control over, if you can make them as simple as possible, you're just going to feel better. So I really recommend keeping on top of the workload, because that really is the last thing you need to be worrying about. Second point is, don't feel obliged to tell everyone what you're going through. Obviously, when you go to university, for a lot of people, it's going to be a completely new group. You're not going to know anyone very well, and you might not feel comfortable telling people about the situation that you're in. However, I would recommend, once you do have a few close friends, to let a few people know. It's really good to have people looking out for you, and it's also a nice peace of mind for yourself to know that if there is someone you want to talk to about it, there is someone who is aware. You're not going to have to go and have this awkward conversation. If there's just a couple of people that know the situation, it can often be quite beneficial, I found anyway. This one I think can be applied to university, school, work, and that is, if at any point you feel like the anxiety is being detrimental to your achieving, if you think that your work is going to suffer, if you think that you're just not going to be able to do your best at any point because of the anxiety, you need to tell someone. You need to tell a lecturer you trust, you need to tell a boss, you need to tell a teacher. It would be really, really awful if you got penalised for something that is genuinely beyond your control. They're generally going to be really understanding of the situations like this if you need an extension or if you need extra help. So I really recommend that if at any point you feel like it is putting a strain on your work, that you go tell someone. If at any point you feel like the anxiety is making you want to leave, make a pros and cons list, because often when you're in the height of it, when you're caught up in it, your brain goes straight to the worst case scenario. I really recommend making pros and cons lists. This is a good time to have someone, as I said before, that knows the situation you're in, that can help you through it. You do not want to go making any irrational decisions because you're kind of in the eye of the storm as such. You want to either wait until you're calm before you make a decision, or you want to make pros and cons lists so you can see it right in front of you, the benefits and the detriments of the decision you're about to make, especially if it's a big one such as dropping out. If there are any little things in life that make you feel better, even if they're not completely rational, my advice is to just do them. As long as they're not harmful, I really see nothing wrong personally in doing the little silly things that make you feel better. Me, for example, I get really bad anxiety if I leave the house without tissues and a bottle of water, which is essentially quite irrational, because if I did ever forget it, I could go buy some more. However, that thought freaks me out ridiculously, so I just make sure I have tissues and a bottle of water with me. And as I said before, you want to make life as easy for yourself as possible, and that is one of the things that makes life easy for me. So if you do have any kind of little strange tendencies that are a result of your anxiety but are not going to harm yourself or the people around you if you go with them, then I say just go with them. If you haven't actually been diagnosed with anxiety, or maybe if you just want to try something yourself before you go and get medication, I recommend trying something like Rescue Remedy. Rescue Remedy looks like this. Obviously, I'm not giving medical advice. This is herbal. It's kind of controversial. My dad's a pharmacist, so I don't really think that he's the biggest fan of stuff like this, but it's basically just a herbal spray that is meant to calm you down. I'm not sure if it works. I don't think it's been clinically proven. Lots of people find it helps. I find it helps. Maybe it is placebo, but to be quite honest, if my brain can make me ill in the first place, I'm more than happy if my brain can make me feel better. I have two. I have a big one that I keep in my handbag, and I have a small one that I keep in my bedroom, and it doesn't always help, but sometimes just having it with you can make you feel a bit better. So I do recommend you try something like this because it might work for you. But as I said, I'm not a healthcare professional, I'm just giving advice from my own experiences. I really recommend you keep a note of all your symptoms and all the things that can trigger your symptoms. This can be helpful for yourself to notice patterns, but it's also essential if you are going to go to the doctors to talk to them about it. To have it all written down in front of you can be really, really useful, because when you go into the doctor's surgery and they start quizzing you, sometimes you can get flustered and forget things. So what I have been doing for a really long time now is I have a note in my phone, and every single time I get a symptom linked to anxiety, like my heart speeding up, me feeling panicked, me crying over nothing, me feeling sick, I write it down. And if I can realise what triggered it, I also write that down, because it's just really good to be able to spot the patterns for you, and as I said, if you ever do need to see a healthcare professional about it. If anxiety is scaring you out of doing something, this is what I do. I think about what the worst case scenario of both decisions are. So I decide what is the worst that can happen if I do it, and what is the worst that can happen if I don't do it. I then decide, based on that, which one I would regret more. Would I regret not doing it more, or would I regret doing it more if the worst case scenario was to happen? Quite often, I freak myself out of doing something, and then when I actually stop and think what is actually the worst that can happen, I realise that yes, it's going to be really, really scary, but in fact it is probably something I can deal with, and that I'm more likely to regret not going for it than I am going for it. So that's just a little system that I do in my own head to try and evaluate whether something is worth doing or not. However, saying that, don't feel like you always have to do something. If there's something that you do kind of want to do, but you just really feel like it is going to be too scary and it's going to make you too anxious, maybe just don't do it. Maybe you just need some more time to get to the point where you can do it, or maybe your personality just isn't suited to doing something like that. I remember in first year when some of my friends went clubbing in, I think it might have been Brighton, and that's a couple of hours on the train from London, and they went clubbing in Brighton. They stayed clubbing in Brighton all night and then got the first train home at about 4 o'clock in the morning. And I kind of wanted to go, but then when I thought about it, I thought, do you know what? No, that's not something that I'm suited to doing. Yes, it is going to scare me, but also it's just not something that I want to do. So do not beat yourself up if you decide you don't want to do something. It doesn't mean you failed. It doesn't mean that you should be ashamed. It just means you don't want to do something, and that is not a bad thing at all. Everyone's different. Watch out for subconscious symptoms of anxiety, such as hair pulling, which is called trichotillomania, skin picking, dermatillomania, or things like teeth grinding in your sleep, bruxism. I'm not going to go really into detail in any of these, because I'm sure by doing your own research you can find a lot more stuff about it. But these things are often subconscious. They're often compulsions that you do not consciously realise you're doing, but can be an indication of anxiety or even depression. So I really recommend that you just try and keep aware of what you're doing. This is, again, going back to my earlier point about having someone who knows the situation you're in. They can also help watch out for it. For example, I didn't realise I was grinding my teeth really, really badly until I started getting headaches here, and my ears starting hurting, and my jaw was hurting in the morning. And after a few weeks of this, I realised that my anxiety had got to the point where I was grinding my teeth in my sleep and clenching my jaw. So just keep your eye out for things like that, because it isn't always going to be glaringly obvious if you've got a subconscious symptom. This brings me on to my last point, and this is, if at any point your anxiety becomes something that you cannot cope with in a healthy way by yourself, seek medical advice. I know there is such a taboo with going to a doctor, going to a therapist, going to a psychiatrist, to do with any illness that is in your head, because we just live in a society where mental illness is a really, really big taboo. People don't like admitting they've got it. People don't like seeking help. They don't like to admit that they need the help. However, you have to just be mindful of yourself and the fact that sometimes you do just have to go and get help. There are people who know about this way more than you do. There are people who are way more qualified to help you than you are yourself sometimes, and I just really think that if at any point you can't deal with it, you just need to succumb to that and go get help. Don't feel like you're failing just because you can't do it by yourself, because you wouldn't feel like you were failing if you had cancer and had to go get treatment for that. So if the anxiety becomes something you can't cope with, I don't think there should be anything to feel ashamed of by going and getting help. It's an illness, same as anything, and I just if I could do anything, it would be to destigmatise it, because having a stigma on mental illness is very damaging. It's damaging to society, it's damaging to individuals, and no one should be scared to seek professional attention if they need it. Just the last point I'd like to make is that to remember, if you are starting university, or you're that sort of age, anxiety is common. Everyone thinks they're the only one suffering from something until they go and Google it or Tumblr it, and then you realise that hundreds and thousands of people are going through the same. So don't feel like you're by yourself. Don't feel like it's isolating or taboo, because it isn't. Like, loads of people are going through this, and just because not everyone talks about it doesn't mean it isn't there. And another thing, it's totally possible to do really, really well at university even if you suffer from anxiety. I got a first, and that was, even before I was a really, really anxious person, that was like a complete dream. But just by making sure that I surrounded myself with the people that could help me, and that I had my own little ways of making myself feel better, I was able to do well. And I firmly believe that anyone can do that. If I can do it, anyone can do it. I always get my knickers in a twist. I'm well known for that, and I still manage to do it. So I really think that anxiety doesn't have to be something that ruins your chances at being happy or succeeding, because there are always going to be hurdles that you face. It doesn't mean you can't jump over them. So that's the end of that video. I hope it's been helpful. As always, let me know in the comments, and as always, if you've got any more suggestions for university advice videos, leave them below. Feel free to email me at jossie@akiojellybean.co.uk if you have any questions that you'd like to ask me there, or anything you'd like to chat about relating to this video or anything. I'm always happy to talk. And yeah, I hope this video has been helpful, and I will see you all soon for another university advice video. Bye!